All right, welcome to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Flecksteiner from Brush PD in Colorado. He has 22 years experience in law enforcement, and I'm really looking forward to having a conversation. So welcome to the show, Chief Flecksteiner. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, man. I definitely don't know if I would call myself wise, so I appreciate that.
I think there's wisdom in experience, and you've been in this job for 22 years, so I would imagine that you've learned some things along the way.
I'd like to think so.
Can you give some background? How did you start in law enforcement and what did those 22 years look like for you?
So I say I didn't get into some noble reason. My wife and I, my first wife and I got married, and we were having a kid, and I needed to find a job that kind of suited my personality because I tend to be fairly caring. I tend to take care of people and do what I can to help. So it seemed like a good fit, and I didn't really want to do the firefighter thing. So I got into law enforcement. I got hired with Brush back in 2003. So and I've been here my entire career. The community has been great, so I've kind of stuck around with this. And the last 22 years, I started as just a patrol officer, just doing the regular beat thing, and then just worked my way up through the ranks until 2022, when the previous chief left, and then they offered me opportunity to be able to step in as a chief, and that's currently where I'm at. So I've been doing chief thing for not quite 3 years, and it seems to be going fairly well so far.
That's good. I'm curious, through your career and the various assignments and roles that you've had, what have been maybe some of the greatest lessons that you've learned?
For me, honestly, paying more attention earlier on in planning. I think
Mm.
specifically myself, I started this career when I was 22. So, 22-year-old, you really not a lot of forethought. If you don't have a lot of guidance from parents, things like that, they kind of push you in a direction to make sure you're taking care of things and planning. I think kind of that's been my biggest telltale thing is I definitely think there are things with the last 22 years I definitely could have done better with just planning stuff, financial things, physically just taking care of myself, and just didn't prioritize it because, when you're 22, you're healthy, everything's perfectly fine, no issues, you haven't had anything big impact you, and you kind of take things for granted, and you really don't think about, how is this going to do and how is this going to affect me 20 years down the road because you just don't put that much thought into it. So I think I definitely wished I would have done a little bit more with that to place myself in at least a little bit better position than I am right now. But
And I can completely relate to that too. I mean, I think that at some point in our life, we all reach that point of like, man, I wish I would have done this earlier, or I wish I would
sure.
have prioritized that.
Mhm.
And honestly, we talked offline a little bit, but that's one of the reasons why I started this podcast is how can we have these conversations where you have that perspective and you have those insights to share. So hopefully if there is someone who's listening who's earlier in their career and who's younger, this is a sign um, to pre-plan and to focus on longevity and what it's going to look like in 22 years. And I think it is hard. I think when I was in my early 20s, I was the same. Like I was like I feel good. Like I don't need to focus on that or like talking to me at 22 about financial wellness, no way. Like
Oh yeah, no.
I was like, it comes, it goes. It's not even real. I don't know. Just like paycheck to paycheck,
Mhm.
no education on financial planning whatsoever. So I do think that proactive wellness is always going to be the hardest. But I wish that I had individuals in my life that shared that insight and that education with me. I wish I had mentors or role models who could sit me down and maybe shake me a little bit and say, hey, this is really important and you should XYZ. And
Yeah.
so, I appreciate you having that insight of like, I wish I would have done that. And I think, now it's how can we provide more education so that there is that next step of action.
Yeah. And I think that's a big part of importance for leadership because obviously once you're in my role and even higher up, in other positions that essentially have an impact for people where, people are following you because of the position you're in and you get that open ear a little bit easier than you would be if you were just some random, person that's a little older than you telling, hey, you're walking around random person's like, hey, kiddo, make sure you take care of, pay attention to retirement, something like that. But when you're in a leader, you already have that open ear, I think, that puts you in availability to be able to have a bigger impact because they're already listening to you. They already respect you for whatever reason, be that, you train them or you just happen to be in a higher ranking position, they pay attention a little bit more. So you have those abilities to say, hey, this is what I did wrong. This is what I could have done better, and be able to get that impact a little bit quicker than if you were just some random older person saying, hey, make sure you do these kind of things because you're like, okay, what do I do with that information? Whereas somebody you already trust and you believe in and you're following along with, you have that ability to be able to have that impact a little bit easier on people.
Yeah, and I think that's an important reminder to anyone who might be listening who is in leadership of you do have that power to inspire and educate the younger generation through your experiences. And I think that it takes vulnerability and openness to be able to share those things, to sit in front of your people and say, hey, this is maybe what I didn't do so great.
Mhm.
And, this is how you can learn from that, I think does take a little bit of openness and vulnerability. And it is powerful. If someone's already respecting you and they want to follow in your footsteps, I do think that people are going to listen to that.
And the leaders, like one of the things I think I struggle with in this position is um, to have a little more confidence in things. So I would definitely encourage, and I have to talk to myself almost every day, that when you do talk to people and you are giving guidance, you leading them, they are listening, they are paying attention, you are doing an impact. Because I know I tend to fall in that doldrum of um, not knowing if it's really doing anything on my end because a lot of the stuff isn't a face value. You're not going to see specific changes that are, it's not a goal that you're going to see that's going to be directly in front of you. It's definitely going to be more back end related things that you're not going to see, but it's being followed and being listened to. So I think, even speaking leader to leader for anybody else that's in a position that I'm in or just a role that's, a supervisor or something like that, they're listening, they're paying attention. You may not be able to see the impact that you're having on them, but I can promise everybody is listening and they're paying attention. And as long as you're providing good information and you're being a good leader, you're being a good mentor, you're guiding people in a proper way in a good position, they're listening to you and they're making some changes. You just may not see it, but have confidence in that they are doing the things that you're hoping that they're doing. And yeah, so just don't be ashamed if you're not sure if you're not seeing it because the reward is not there of seeing people do things because they are.
Yeah, and I think that is a really important message. And it's kind of that message of like, just keep going and keep, trying your best to be the best leader and to give the best information that you can because it's hard when you don't get like instant gratification or you don't get that validation right away that what you're doing is helping. But I think every once in a while you will get those little pieces, where someone comes up to you and it might be years down the road, where someone comes up to you and they're like, hey, you said this one time and that really helped me and I want to say thank you. And
Mm,
it's like those fleeting like moments that happen that mean everything.
yeah,
When someone comes up to you and says that you helped them,
yeah,
I think that's the motivator to keep going, and it might not be right away. You
yeah,
might walk into
sure.
that briefing or that meeting and say stuff and have a lot of blinking and maybe not a lot of
Yeah,
conversation.
a lot of glazed looks that you think people are starting paying close attention. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, this day and age, we're instant gratification on everything and anything anymore. So when you don't say something and you have that obviously glow in the eyes, and I'm like, okay, they took that in, and now they're gonna do something great about it. They may not have that on the initial face, and you may not see that, but they're listening, and they more than likely will make some of the changes down the road. You just may not know it for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask you, I mean, 22 years in this career, I would imagine that impacted your personal wellness. Can you share kind of what that looked like for you and, maybe some of the things that have helped you along the way?
Sure. So I'd say so. I even just going back even pre-law enforcement. I was heavy into working out. It was kind of my thing for high school and then early 20s. And then I got into this line of work, and at that time I'm relatively decent shape. I've worked out for so long, and kind of muscle memory's there, and you've got the knowledge, and you think you're good, and nothing can go differently. And then slowly but surely, just day to day stuff and going to work, and finding reasons as to why you don't have time or don't have the availability for it. Um, so I just wellness kind of I'd say got put on the back burner because you're working nights, you're working shifts, you're not, you're thinking, okay, I'm hungry, I've got to find something just quick and easy. So you stop at the convenience store for something, something simple to try to find something to eat, and your personal wellness gets put on the back burner a little bit. And then you take into consideration if financially not the greatest. So over time, working as much as you possibly can, regardless of what shifts are changing. Because in law enforcement, especially for a smaller agency, it's not uncommon where if there's an overtime opportunity, it may not necessarily fall in line with what your normal schedule is. So you may have to take an impact on your sleep to be able to get on an overtime opportunity or something to pop up. So you just little bits and pieces here and there where you're just not paying attention to what you're doing to your body and doing to yourself, and the impact that it can have, especially over a very long period.
And I think to your point, it's kind of a snowball effect.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's like you're working shift work, so you're not sleeping as much, which is going to impact your wellness. And then you're not eating well because you're on shift work, and that's going to, you're not eating, you're not sleeping. Then you're working overtime,
Mhm.
which is compounding because now you're still not sleeping, and you're still probably eating not the best types of food
Oh,
out
yeah.
on the road, especially if it's a midnight shift or something like that.
Mhm.
Um, and then financially, you're stressed, which is a whole nother thing that impacts everything.
Oh yeah.
You're not home as much because you're working more, and so that impacts home wellness. And so it's all interconnected in kind of this snowball effect. You coming from a background of fitness and then kind of segueing into this career where you started to maybe not prioritize and take care of yourself as much. Did you notice a difference in your mental wellness? Did you notice the impact that that had long term?
I think initially you don't see it. I
Yeah.
think initially you don't because, again, younger, not paying close attention to things. So I got promoted to corporal in 2006, and I was essentially on a night shift from 2006 until 2017. So
Wow,
I
that's
was
a long time.
basically, and there'll be people that say that's not really a graveyard shift. So it wasn't a 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So we were working our 8 hour shifts at the time, but it was a 7:30 p.m. to 3:30 a.m. shift. And I did that for so long that most guys come on days off, they'll flip their sleep schedule. So if you're on graves, you don't want to sleep your days off away. So you'll stay up a little bit later and try to make the most of things and ultimately kind of mess your body up. I was on nights long enough that I just maintained that sleep schedule. So my days off, I still stayed up until 3:34 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and then slept until the afternoon, just to maintain an equilibrium of some sort. Um, but you don't really pay attention initially. You don't think it's going to have that big of an impact, but um, I will say that not taking care of myself initially, I think one, um, digestively, I think my body's considerably worse off being on nights for so long, and not prioritizing taking care of things that well. Physically, I know I am. Obviously, I've got aches and pains now that I think come with age in general, but I think they wouldn't be as bad had I done something a little bit more, with resiliency early on. And then mental health wise, I definitely think I would be better off. Law enforcement, I will say, has not always been the best for encouragement of taking care of yourself mentally.
Mm.
I think there probably have been agencies otherwise all over the place that probably done a lot better, but um, overall, law enforcement was never really encouraged to take care of yourself. Even if you would have the occasional supervisor was like, "Hey, talk to me. What's going on with you?" It was never really hounded on really well to make, "Hey, really do take care of yourself." Because if you don't, what kind of trauma is going to have, and what kind of things is going to take care of you? Um, I know I didn't do that at all. We were really never encouraged to do that. It really didn't have that much of a push, going up through the majority of my career. So I know, like I said specifically, those are the things that I've seen. I wished I would have done better about because how I would feel now could very well be considerably different than what I do now, or if I would have done it better then.
100%. And I know that you said earlier that you came up with a lot of reasons why not to do the things. And I think that, we hear a lot of excuses and we tell ourselves a lot of excuses, as to why we can't prioritize our wellness. What were maybe some of those excuses or reasons why, that you came up with that, prevented you from taking action and prioritizing your wellness?
Sure. So I call them excuses for myself.
Mhm.
I don't, sugarcoat it and try to be, a little bit easier and say reasons or, for me, they're excuses.
Yeah.
I could have very well pushed through them and didn't. So I think firstly is to kind of help identify that they're excuses for most people. Nobody likes to hear the word excuses because it sounds very negative. It sounds very derogatory. But in essence, it is what it is. For me, excuses was don't have the time.
Mhm.
And obviously, at the time, I'm working nights, and so I have a limited amount of time. Obviously, as I kind of mentioned, I slept through the day, so and 8-hour shifts. You don't have a lot of time. I didn't have a lot of days off. You ultimately have 2 days off at most, and if I'm sleeping some of those days, I'm not getting a lot of opportunity. So I found, okay, well, I prioritize, I would say, other hobbies that I enjoyed over those things, and saying, well, if I don't have time to do this, but I always have lots of time to do this other stuff. Um,
Mhm.
so that was obviously just time. Didn't have the time for it. And then for me specifically, coming from more of a gym background, I worked out primarily to gym, so I'm used to machines and free weights and stuff like that. And obviously, financially in my career at the beginning, I really didn't have a lot of money. So another excuse, well, I can't afford to find things. There were
Mhm.
free options. There were free gym options that were close by that I could have very well, very, very cheap options that I could have done. But okay, well, this gym doesn't have what I'm used to, so there's an excuse for me not to do it.
Yeah.
And then just I hate to say, unfortunately, it's relationship stuff comes into place, and you have a significant other, and then those are things I would say yes are not necessarily excuses, but are definitely more reasons that impact it. You have a significant other, you have kids that you have to prioritize and take care of. So you have excuses that I made to, rather than focusing on myself physically and taking better care of myself and maintaining hobbies that were definitely not going to do anything for me beneficially. And then adding on top of, you've got to take care of your family, you got to spend time with wife and kids and things like that. I think we're probably a much bigger one for it. And just find reasons for, just not going. And, after, be like, well, just, I won't go this day, I'll go tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes, and we're like, okay, well, I can't come today, so I'll do it this time. Okay, well, I did bad this week, but I'll do better next week. And like you mentioned, snowball. It comes to a point where um, you just get in the habit of not taking care of yourself, and it doesn't really come to pass. You don't recognize it because I know specifically, physically, you notice when you put on a lot of weight and you look unhealthy and you don't feel good. But when it's day to day to day, it becomes the new norm and you don't notice it. And, until something happens that's like, oh, this is terrible. I can't believe I got like this. If it does nothing like that happens, it just keeps compounding and you just never really recognize that this is a time to fix something. Um,
And I think that the word that really stuck out to me that you said a couple times is priority. Is it a priority to you? Because you're prioritizing other things, right? You're saying that you have time for other things. And, maybe those things aren't healthy, or maybe they are. I don't know exactly what it was that you were prioritizing, but I know a lot of people I talk to are like, yeah, well, like I, had time to scroll on Instagram for an hour, or I had time to binge watch Netflix,
yeah, watch an entire
or
season of something.
exactly, or like I had time to, go shopping and spend money. And it's these other like mechanisms, these other coping mechanisms that there's time, but it's the prioritization of your time, that's maybe unbalanced.
Yeah.
And I saw this thing the other day that I really, really liked because I talk about your why a lot, especially in the context of wellness. Like, why is it important to you? And that has to be something that's really important to you. And I saw this thing the other day that said, if your why is important enough, then the how is easy. So
Right.
if you have that like driving motivator of like, this is important to me because of this, and that's really important to you, whether it's your family, retirement, whatever that is, then the how becomes easy because
Mhm.
then it's not a matter of motivation anymore. It's dedication to your why.
Yeah.
Um, how did you turn that around? How did you get yourself out of this space of, I'm not really taking care of myself. It's become my new norm. I know
Mhm.
maybe I'm not feeling super great. How did you turn that around to start proactively prioritizing your wellness?
I mean, for me, it wasn't like I knew I wasn't definitely healthy. I definitely didn't. I didn't wasn't healthy. I didn't really care for how I kind of looked. But for me, I think for me it was kind of a reintroduction to fitness. I originally, before becoming a law enforcement, I'm like I was physical therapist. That's what I wanted to do. I had a family member that was a personal trainer and had a big background in physical therapy and all kinds of different things and sports medicine, and that was what I wanted to do. Ultimately decided I didn't really do like the college thing very much. Was a big part of the reason I didn't continue that. But that was kind of my background and what I wanted to do. And I think honestly in 2020 it was just a case of finding something to get the kids a little bit out a little bit more because we're a technology family, so the kids all have phones and computers and all that kind of stuff. So the gym became something for me to grab my kids and let's go out and exercise and work out and do things. So,
Yeah.
and I think I started in that path, and it stuck because they said, and then I recognized that that is something I really enjoy. That is something I really, I think for me is something that really sets very centrally with me, and I lost that. And I think when I started kind of doing it, it was just a love of just getting in the gym. I enjoy the fitness. Enjoy bettering myself. Enjoy that lifestyle of things of just what one person can do and how much they can push themselves to be able to fix and improve themselves, and the goal setting and different things like that. And I think that's kind of a big part of it. And then now that I'm about 5 years back into things, I'm recognizing what it's done. I the little aches and pains and some of the things that I was recognizing I was doing. If I would strain my back, 10 years ago, I was like down for days because I'd screwed something up and it hurt. Now I notice little things where if I do get something little minuscule, an injury or some kind of tweak or something as you have it, just rebounds better because I've been taking care of myself. So I think just the fact of just getting back in love with fitness and then recognizing how I feel day to day, physically and mentally, has been just a considerably compounding effort for me to just notice. I'm like, okay, this is good. I really wished I wouldn't have stopped it, but I'm glad that I'm back into it and able to do it again.
And I think that it's a reminder to anyone who maybe has fallen out of it that you can always start it again. I think that a lot of times with kind of to the point of like the snowball and the excuses, it's like sometimes you reach a point where it's like, what's the point? Like you feel like there's no way to get out of it and to like kind of crawl back out and start. And I think it's a really important reminder that even if you do fall out of it, like you can start today,
Mm-hmm.
not tomorrow, not the tomorrow
Find time.
excuse.
Just find the
But
time.
but
Yeah,
find the
no.
time. Yeah, and there's also a thing, because I struggle with this too. And I have to remind myself too of like it's a prioritization of my time. Because I have said that excuse to myself too of, I don't have time. I have meetings from 7 a.m. until 5 p.m. straight. No breaks, no time to do anything. And then I'm like, well, I do have time. I have time at 5 o'clock in the morning. I
Yeah.
have time at, 7 o'clock at night. But I also think that when it comes to wellness, there's other really unique strategies that you can do just to like get the ball rolling.
Mhm.
You can do 10 minutes of whatever
Mhm.
mobility, walking around your block, just get outside, like just start a small habit and then build on that instead of thinking I have to dedicate 2 hours of my day every single day to a really, really hard workout. I
Yeah.
think that small steps, small actionable steps
Mhm.
create big lasting change. So you can build on that. You can also do something called habit stacking. And if no one, knows what that is, it's incorporating wellness into things that you already do. And that could be different facets of wellness, and maybe you're doing some sort of meditation or breath work or gratitude while you are driving to work or while you're driving home from work. Maybe you can do something while you're in the shower.
Mhm.
Maybe you can do something while you're brushing your teeth. So there are things that you can do to habit stack where it doesn't require you to carve out more time. And then one thing that I've done, and I don't know if this has helped you, but I actually schedule it. If it's not on my calendar, it's not going to happen. So if I schedule it like it's an appointment, like I have a meeting, and I frame it as like I have a meeting with myself, and I'm going to show up to a meeting for myself as I would show up for a meeting for you. And I hold that to a high standard of like, I would never no show on someone I have a meeting scheduled with. I would never do that. So why would I no show on myself? And so
Mhm.
it's kind of that framing of like, I schedule it and there's nothing that's going to get in the way of that time block that I have because that's a meeting that I have. So maybe that's a helpful strategy. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think anything that helps do it. And honestly, I think just speaking back to, starting smaller, I will tell you, I said from, being late teens, early 20s, I knew what I was physically capable of. So obviously being, I would say it was more strength training related things. So I remembered how much I could lift back in the day and how many this and that. And then honestly, starting out a little bit smaller,
Yeah.
especially after 20 some years of not doing as much as you should, you're not going to be where you were. So if you have somebody that maybe fell off and wasn't doing something and then they're like, well, I'm going to go back in and work out, I remember how I used to work out, I remember what I was capable of, and then they start going back into basically just jumping 20 years and being like, this is what I'm going to go back and do, you're probably not going to be able to do the same things. So honestly, recognizing that you may have to take a step back, start a little bit smaller. So after 20 years, if you're not as limber as you used to, your flexibility is not as much as you used to, you may want to get back into stretching a little bit because, if you think that, 20 years has passed and I'm going to jump back into it without any kind of changes, you're going to get discouraged pretty quickly and recognize, because I said I know from my experience, when I got back into things, I wasn't in lifting anywhere near what I used to be able to, and I was like, okay, well, this is discouraging. And you're like, well, do I continue to do this? Do I continue to try? Because I recognize that I'm not where I'm at, but then recognizing I didn't do what I was supposed to, and then it's okay. It's an opportunity for me to keep that journey going and get to where I was before and hopefully be able to get past to where I was, because now, I'm older. I'm a little wiser. I'm not just, a 20-year-old kid that can throw things around and wait around and not have any injuries or anything like that. I kind of have to pay a little careful about it and be a little more strategic and pay a little closer attention to things and honestly spend more time learning and educating myself versus just being like I'm a 20-year-old kid working out kind of thing. So for me, that was a big part, was recognizing that I wasn't where I was before. And now I think I've gotten to the point to where I'm not where I was before, but I think I've improved a little bit in certain areas of things. So
Yeah.
starting out smaller, starting habits might help kind of unpack the discouragement of like, well, now I'm heavier than I was before, so running hurts now. Now I can't really run like I used to, or I can't lift as much as I used to, or I'm not as flexible as I used to. I'm like I can't bend and touch my toes. So a lot of those little tiny things and starting a little simpler may help keep the discouragements from happening, because if you're really just trying to jump back into what you were before, you're probably not going to be able to. So
100%. And I appreciate you sharing that because I've been there too. It's a blow to the ego a little bit to be like, man, like I used to be able to do this, like now I suck,
yeah,
or whatever is that
that's
mental
the point. Yeah.
narrative that you have. And I think it is important to practice some self-compassion. And I truly believe that comparison is the thief of joy.
Oh
And,
yeah.
like,
Especially this day and age.
yeah, and you're comparing yourself to an earlier version of you. And instead of recognizing, like, you know what, like maybe I'm not physically where I used to be, but I have grown in these areas, or like I showed up today. There's things to be proud of and to be like joyful of, but as soon as you go and say like I'm not who I used to be,
Yeah.
it like immediately shuts that down. So having that self-compassion and, recognizing like, what, I took this step to do this today and maybe I'm not where I used to be, but that's okay. And maybe I'll never get to where I used to be, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
Because things do change as you get older. You can't expect to be the same.
Mhm.
I don't want to be the same. I'm hoping that, like to your point, that you're growing in other areas, where you're improving in other things, maybe like mobility, or your mental health is better than it was then, or, and so I think that we have to accept change and growth in other areas. So I appreciate you saying that, because I do think that's important. A lot of people do get discouraged and then they just quit again. So
Yeah.
keep going, be okay with not being where you used to be. And it's a part of the journey, you
Yeah.
know.
And I will say, I mean, obviously not necessarily for, younger people that may be coming up, but I can speak for myself from being where I appreciate it a little bit more. Because obviously I'm like, I was able to do what I was doing before, and I was proud of it. And it's something I remember being able to do. But I think being able to achieve what I am now, I appreciate it more for what I've been able to do. And I don't know if that's necessarily comes with age and
Yeah.
the case, but I just know like when I have a good workout and I have something that goes well, I appreciate it more. And I think that's a beneficial thing for people that are, if they fell off and they're trying to come back into it, you might find, you can't necessarily achieve what you used to, but you might find that, the things that you're goal setting, and once you get them, you may actually appreciate them a little bit more than when you're kind of young and, naive a little bit and not really recognizing fully what you're capable of doing.
Yeah. No, I love that. I know that we talked a little bit earlier about how, like, your hope is that others can learn from your experiences and in the things that you've gone through in your career. And how did all of the things that we just talked about in the context of wellness, how does that impact the way you lead and maybe some of the resources that you now offer within your organization that prioritize wellness?
Well, I mean, the way I think using my experiences has kind of been for me, I think for me is probably the easiest way for me to identify it, because it's better, and I think to be able to speak from experience.
Mhm.
If I say, for example, I know of other guys in this community specifically that have been working out day one. They've just been able to maintain a good strategy, and they push people to work out, but they have a certain aspect to themselves, a certain personality to themselves that somebody that's never done anything before, that's never really thought about it before, maybe did do a little bit and it didn't really jive with them, just doesn't show the proper encouragement. Like if
Mhm.
you see somebody that's a professional powerlifter, a professional bodybuilder, or someone that's a very, very high level performer in any kind of physical fitness, you may not necessarily get along with them. But like me, I think I speak very openly about just being, I'm just a common person. There's nothing super special about what I've done, where I've been. So being able to say, I was a 20 something year old cop, and I spent a lot of time taking, having hobbies that weren't necessarily, didn't work good for me healthily. And I spent more time with taking care of my wife and my kids, and spending time with my wife and my children. I've noticed with a lot of my younger guys, they're in that pattern. They're in that plotty of they're spending time doing other stuff. They're in a position of being a family person and doing those kind of things. So to be able to say, I did that, and now I'm kind of paying for it a little bit because I didn't prioritize myself. Because it's a very worthwhile venture to spend time with family and prioritize work and making money that you can, all that kind of stuff. That it's very great. You really do need to do those things, but you have to take care of yourself because you're the one that's spending time with them. And if you're hurting, you're in pain, mentally you're not okay, the efforts and the time that you're spending doing those things ultimately is degraded. So, yeah, you're spending time with your wife and kids, or your spouse and your kids, your significant other, what have you. And if you're not in a good headspace, how much time are you really giving them that's worthwhile? How much of that time is really being like, we're glad dad's around, but he seems kind of miserable. He's not happy to be, he's not feeling good. So, you take care of yourself, exercise, take care of yourself physically so that you don't have bumps and bruises. And I think a big part of like the kind of the direction I look at it as is, I know of guys that have worked for 40 some years in law enforcement, not necessarily the best choices, which is where they're having to do it. But I mean, really, you want 25, 30 years in law enforcement, which puts you, 50s, 60s, depending. You still have another 20, 30 years beyond that. So, prioritize the times that you are through the career so that once the career is over with, you have time after that. I said, I know law enforcement where one of the higher mortality rates for, within 5 years of retiring, you're dead because you didn't take care of yourself during this because of shift work and all these kind of things. So for me, I think just identifying where I came from and the decisions I made and the poor choices I made, I'm not afraid, excuse me, to say I I was literally dumb. Like I was literally dumb. I was naive. I didn't pay attention to these kind of things. And if I can at least identify myself as, not doing the smartest things in the world and be able to tell people, hey, don't do this because these reasons, you'll be better off. You'll feel better when you hit when you turn 44, and if you're still doing these things, this is how you'll feel if you're not taking care of yourself and where you're at. Because I've been through that. I've done all that already. So do yourself a favor and prioritize some things a little bit so that you don't feel the way I do. And it does take dedication. It does take the days of when I'm, okay, I want a day off where I just want to do nothing. I just want to hang out thing. I'm like, no, a day off. Today's the day for working out. This is my workout time. This is my time to take care of myself and do these things and stick to it and just keep pushing forward.
And I love the relatability because you're right. Like if someone is, kind of fallen off or maybe don't know what to do. And there's someone that's like, just do it. Like I've done it and I've been successful all the time. And they're like, well, I can't really relate to that, So there's relatability in sharing your story. And one of the things that you said that I thought was really important to remember is that it's all about quality. It's the quality of your life, that matters. It's not just existing and like skating through, right? It's like if you're going to be with your family, you want to be the best version of yourself that you can be. Physically, you want to be able to play with your kids and do all the things. You mentally, you want to, be in a really good headspace. So like you said, it's not like, well, dad just feels mad all the time or he's not really around, he's off doing other things. I
Mhm.
think having that idea of like, hey, it's all about the quality of my life and, trying to create that best version of yourself that you possibly can be for yourself, for your performance on the job so that you can, make safe, effective decisions. You can be there for your community and then you can be there for your family. And if you're not taking care of yourself, there's no way that you can operate at your highest level if you're not prioritizing your
Mhm.
physical and mental wellness. There's just no way. You're not the highest version of yourself that you possibly can be. And so how can you take action and put in the steps to improve those areas of your life so that you feel your best?
Mhm.
And I think that what an amazing place we're in now. And obviously, there's always room for improvement. But when I started in this wellness space 8 years ago, these conversations weren't really happening,
Mhm.
and it wasn't the way that it is now to where, younger officers have leadership who are sharing these things, have leadership who are prioritizing wellness organizationally. I know that you have, a wellness app and you have blood work that you guys are doing and a number of things that you're, prioritizing organizationally for your people, but these things weren't always happening. And so I am optimistic that through these conversations and through leadership, like yourself, that the more education and the more conversations, then the more proactive
Mhm.
wellness will happen.
Yeah. I just speaking to obviously the people that are going through the same, starting out in their careers the same as mine. Um, I hear murmurs. Obviously, I don't hear specifically, but I hear, other officers from other agencies that are happy that I'm in the position that I'm in and I'm prioritizing physical fitness. I'm getting out and I'm working out and I'm doing these things that they're very encouraged by. So, if you're a leader, um, it helps to lead by example. So, I mean, it's one thing if I was, not taking care of myself in any way shape or form, but in telling everybody that works with me, hey, get out and exercise, get out and go do these things. They'll just be like, you don't, so why do we have to, kind of thing. So I think it's beneficial for if you're in the leadership space and you really want to encourage your people to work out, you want people to take care of themselves, be that physically and or mentally. You've got to do the things. You have to be able to walk the walk and show that you can do things. We're not in a day and age of do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. You really do have to kind of be at the forefront and show people this is what you can do, because they see that, they recognize that if you're just saying things because you think it needs to happen because of this, that, and the reason, because that's what the industry standard is. They notice that, they'll recognize that. So, if wellness, mental health wellness is a big space right now. Okay, well, I got to tell all my people to make sure they take care of themselves mentally, but you're not doing anything for it. If you're in a position to where, physically we're supposed to exercise and do things or eat better, and then you're not doing any of those things, it falls on deaf ears because they're like, okay, well, why do we have to do it if you're not even doing it? If you believed what you said, why don't you do these things? So, for people that are in a leadership role, and I'm not even saying necessarily chiefs or anybody high up in position that I'm in, but first line supervisors, sergeants, things like that. I'm like, show what your people do. Do the things that you want them to do and the things you're encouraging them to do, because that's what they recognize the most. Yeah, they'll see, that you've got, a good plan, you've got things to do. So, but if you're not using the app like you're supposed to, like you can, I should say not supposed to, but you're not using the app like you can. If you've got a blood work opportunity to take care of yourself, but you don't partake and do those kind of things, they recognize you're like, okay, well, this isn't, it's not actually legitimately a thing that you believe in. It's just something you're saying. So, if you
Yeah.
jump in and show that you believe in something, follow through and do those things, because I think for me, I think I recognize that me being at the forefront and trying and doing that stuff is probably having a bigger impact than me just vocalizing and saying, hey guys, we need to do this. Because if I'm doing something myself, and I portray a certain thing about stuff, it's better off. So
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with you, and emulate your messaging
mm,
and lead by example, I think is great. And I even think that message could apply to someone who's not in leadership, but maybe strives to be in leadership one day. Someone who is younger in their career, maybe the message is, take care of yourself now so that when you are in a position of leadership, you can continue to inspire other people to take care of themselves, and I think that it's a really good message to like walk the walk.
mm. And I mean, it's far reaching. It's not even work related, it's home related too. So,
Yeah.
I still fight with that a little bit because I've got teenagers that are like, I just want to hang out and do nothing. But, it's the same thing for me. I'm like, luckily enough, within the last few weeks, I've finally gotten to the point to where I've got not all my family, but pretty much everybody in my family is now going to the gym with me in one time or another to kind of help improve that thing. So, even if you're not, if you're just a line officer, you're just on patrol, or you're just in a line of work, you're a leader somewhere, be that a friend group, at home with kids, spouse, significant other. You have somebody that you can help move forward and improve themselves. And it may not necessarily be anything at work. It may be a peer at work. It may just be a friend that you have that isn't doing the best about themselves. And all of a sudden you're like, what, if I start pushing forward and do something here, I can grab this person and help kind of bring them along as well. So,
I love that.
it doesn't take, you don't have to be, a CEO of a big time company to push down to 2,000 people or anything below you. It's just anybody. You're gonna find, you can find a leadership capability in just about any role you can in life, as long as you're impacting and involving yourself with other people. You have the ability to lead in one way, shape, or form. And the better thing to do is to lead them in a positive way and help better yourself and help improve themselves. Because um, as much as I enjoy working out, as much as I enjoy the little goals that I have set and do things, being able to see, my family coming in and exercising with me, my wife starting her journey of things, and then seeing, some of the people that are working with me at the department take the steps to get in the gym or eating a little bit better and doing those things is very encouraging for me. I mean, I get a big thrill from, setting a goal for a lift that I want to do, but knowing that these people are maybe doing something and I had a little bit of an impact on it, it means a great deal, and it's pretty uplifting as well.
I love that. And I think that we oftentimes forget, because I do think that there's this idea of like, I can't impact people unless I'm in like this official leadership position. but everyone has the power to impact someone's life. And I think that, and I would argue that being in law enforcement, period, you are a leader. You
Mhm.
know, you are a source of inspiration within your community. So when you go out there and you are helping people, you can inspire them to make changes in their life that are going to positively impact their future. And so I think that if everyone, regardless of your role, if you recognize like, I am a leader in one way or another, and I do have that power within myself to change someone's life in a positive way. I think that that's a really powerful position to wake up every day in, just knowing like, hey, today I have the ability to help someone. I have the ability to inspire someone. And, you know, I've had so many stories from other leaders who are like, yeah, I wanted to become a police officer because I met a police officer that inspired me. You know,
Mhm.
you have that ability every day.
Mhm.
You don't have to have the title of, you know, sergeant or lieutenant or chief,
Anything else?
you know, to have that ability to positively impact someone's life.
Mhm. For
Well,
sure.
I have one final question for you, and then I'll give you the floor if we missed anything.
Mhm.
What words of advice would you give to someone who's earlier in their career in the context of wellness? Maybe something that you wish you would have known or something that's helped you along the way?
So, firstly, I would say focus on yourself at least a little bit. Um, if you're the type of person that feels guilty about, hey, I can't work out because I'm already away from my family for 40 hours a week. I don't want to be away from him anymore. Prioritize that. I know it's hard to do, especially you have a significant other that's like, you left me all week and now you're leaving me again. Um, it's okay. They will become accustomed to it and you'll be better for it. And if you're better for it, they'll be better for it. So don't get discouraged for, feeling like you have to step away from your family and spend more time away because you're taking care of yourself. Because if you are better, they'll ultimately be better. Um, Pay attention a little bit more about what you eat. I get it. We're in a day and age of nice, easy, quick meals and things like this. Pay a little bit closer attention. I'm not saying you can't have McDonald's once in a while. I'm not saying you can't have a 7-Eleven hot dog once in a while, but balance it out a little bit. Just pay a little bit closer attention to the things you put in your body, because I can tell you from somebody that deals with a lot of digestive issues, your body will tell you later on that this stuff is not very good for you, and you'll pay for it a little bit. So pay attention a little bit to that. Mental health. Don't be afraid to talk. Don't be afraid to find somebody that you can confide into. Don't be afraid to not be okay on occasion. It's okay to be emotional. It's okay to have bad days. It's okay to feel just down in the dumps. It happens. It's going to happen. I promise you, it will more than likely happen, but you will bounce back.
Mhm.
And the biggest thing about feeling really bad about something, be that if you're depressed, angry, or whatever, it's all about how you respond to it. So I can promise you it's going to happen. Let it happen and work on what you can to help you get through it as quick as you can and as best as you can. Physical fitness, just get out and do something. I would say I've got like a strength training, bodybuilding, powerlifting kind of thing like that. I know tons of CrossFit people. Um, I'm not a CrossFit person, and I recognize I'm not a CrossFit person, and I'm okay with that. I'm able to do what I want to do. You may not want to be a bodybuilder. You may not want to do powerlifting. You may not want to do CrossFitting. May not want to be a marathon runner and run for miles and miles. Just find something that you like. Find something that drives with you, something that makes you feel good. If that's walking, if that's yoga, if that's, jogging here and there, if that's, Peloton, bike riding, find something just physically related that you can help work on things, because your heart has to keep your body running for your entire existence and you kind of need it. So you should probably do something to try to help encourage and take care of that, because if your heart's not in a good state and a good health, your body's definitely not going to last as long as you want it to. So prioritize that and just take care of it. Find the time. It doesn't take hours upon hours. You don't have to work out, 2 hours a day, 7 days a week, or anything like that. You can find the opportunity for it. When you find those opportunities where you're spending a lot of time, scrolling through TikTok, or instead of watching 8 episodes of some show on Netflix or Amazon Prime or something like that, not saying you can't play video games and watch TV and things like that, but recognize how much time you're spending and then go, okay, stop after a couple episodes and then exercise and do something. I promise you, if you look closely at your day, you will find a time to do it. And once you get in the habit of physically getting up and doing things, it doesn't seem as insurmountable when you're getting ready to do something. Because if you're tired and you're hurting and you're not feeling good, getting up and moving feels really uncomfortable and you'd rather just lay down. But as you start to make it a habit and start physically actively doing things, the days that you're like, I really don't want to, but once you start getting that ball rolling, that ball rolls pretty quickly and you'll recognize that you're able to get into a lot better. Um, and another wellness thing is financial wellness. Take care of your money. I get it. You want to spend everything you want. You want to buy all this cool stuff and buy all these new things. You don't have to. It's going to be fleeting. You're going to get the cool things. You're not going to spend as much time for it. So take care of yourself there. Um, and for the workaholics, for the people that are like, I want to work all the overtime to make all the money and these kind of things, um, you never get your time back. There'll always be more opportunity to make money. There'll always be overtime. That stuff will always be there as long as you have a job and you're doing things. The time you never get back. So you may work, an extra 24-hour shifts or whatever that have you, what kind of position you're in. Um, you'll never get that time back. So don't get in a big hurry to make a bunch of money because you're going to get that money and then you're not going to have any time to do anything with it and you're going to lose that time. I come up a position of I spent a lot of time at night on nights that I said I did. So I lost a big chunk of time with my kids because, I spent a lot of time on nights and I didn't do what I could have done better. And I worked a lot of overtime. I lost a lot of time with my kids. I did. So, recognize the balance of needing money, wanting money, and the time that you have. Because again, you're never going to get the time back. The time that you get with your kids and your significant other, and your friends and stuff, you're never getting that back. If you don't do the thing that you are today because you have something else to do, you don't get this time tomorrow. You can't push back. We can't rewind things like that. So recognize these kind of things. You're missing opportunities for them. So if you have an opportunity to spend time with people and do things, by all means do that. So, but yeah, I guess, for me, wellness, it's just be selfish a little bit, take care of yourself. Nobody likes the idea of being selfish because we're discouraged from being selfish. We're expected to be selfless and give every single thing for everything we do to everybody that we're around. But you know what? Sometimes you have to be selfish a little bit to be able to give your best, to be your best, to do your best. Because if you're not happy, you're not healthy. Um, Nobody's going to want to be around you anyway. So you should do something to help kind of encourage and take care of yourself because I think long term you'll be better off for it. And the people around you will be better off for it because you'll inspire people to do things. They'll love to be around you because of these things. And you'll feel good about yourself because one, you're physically active, you're doing things. You'll be happier about yourself. And then when you're leading people and they're looking up to you, be that friends, family, whoever, you'll feel better about it. And I think it's very encouraging to see other people emulating what you're doing, especially if you're emulating and you're doing a good thing.
Thank you. Those were great words of advice. I appreciate your time so much and you spending an hour with me and sharing your story and your insights. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Sure, thank you. I appreciate you having it.
Of course.